Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been, really interesting. We've got one witness who basically thinks regulations should be apparently endless because they all save lives. So I thought I would just bring up some places that we regulate. You checked out the ketchup regulations lately. Check that out? The ketchup regulations define very clearly what ketchup is. Normally we would say, how about the marketplace determine that? I go in and I get the one brand and I think it's a little too thick, I'm not going to buy it next time. Or I buy one, it's a little too thin, I don't buy that next time. Because it isn't the ketchup regulations are not designed necessarily for safety, because you got a whole host of safety regulations over here. Ketchup regulations about thickness and etc. How about this one? You pull it up on here. You go over cheese. Just look at the cheese regulations. Those don't have nothing to do with safety. But you got Asiago cheese and old Asiago cheese. And you got brick cheese. And it's pages and pages and pages of regulations. And guess what? If you don't adhere, and if your Asiago cheese doesn't quite meet that regulation, guess who investigates you? That's the same people who made the regulation. Who's gonna impose sanctions upon you? Same group of people. Let's see, who else? I just took buns, hamburger buns, bakery goods, pages and pages. Not only, they're in 3 different sections of the CFR. Man, you can go after buns. But by golly, we're not overregulated. Microphones, they're regulated. Everything comes back to regulation. And so I think one of our witnesses testified just moments ago that they are the center or axis or whatever of basically lawmaking and policy making in America today. Really are. How about this one? This was fun, coming from Arizona. The EPA was going after Arizona, demanding that we pay to clean up some pollution in the Grand Canyon, except for they acknowledged that it was causing no harm to either the canyon or any personnel. But the thing that really drove us crazy is that all of that was being blown over from the Southern California LA basin. But we were going to get stuck paying for cleaning it up. And the process that they were invoking upon us, based on their regulations, would have cost us tens and tens of millions of dollars, and yet they admitted it would not change the appearance, nor would it actually clean the air. That's what you get when you rely solely on clean air, on regulations. How about this one? In Arizona, OSHA came after Arizona and said, you have not, as required, adopted our federal fall standards, our regulations. We're going to come after you and shut you down, and we're going to take away your ability to enact our OSHA standards that we are imposing upon you. Our response was, but our fall standards are more rigorous and statistically show a safer fall standard than the feds. But we ended up getting sued. We sued back, and we had to settle and say, we'll be less safe and we'll have to adopt the federal standards. When I hear people say that, man, if you don't have federal regulations, you're not going to be safe, I think, well, who's actually applying those federal regulations? It's virtually every state. Arizona DEQ applies the EPA standards for the most part. Arizona's Occupational Labor Department imposes, in many cases, more rigorous regulatory standards than OSHA. But we are stuck because OSHA wants to come in and impose. You want to know why people say we're getting overregulated? It's because even when a state undertakes its own regulatory constraints and its own regulatory framework, the federal government insists upon its regulations coming in, as if everybody in a state is a total dumpkin. That's overreach, and that's the authoritarianism of the fourth branch of government, federal regulation, federal administrative state. I yield back.
Very good.